I'm coming to you from my home in Ra'anana, Israel. I moved here 2.5 years ago with my family, and I really want to respond to what's become a pressing question with the events that are taking place across the Jewish world, where this question of is anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism is becoming ever more pressing. Organizations, individuals are looking to boycott Israel and claiming that they're not anti-Semitic, they're anti-Zionist. And this has manifested most recently in Rodin School, a prestigious girls' school in Johannesburg, cancelling tennis fixtures where they were supposed to play against King David's School, a Jewish day school in Johannesburg, which has Zionist affiliations, on the grounds of pressure from the parent body at Rodin of wanting the school to take a stand against Zionism and not being comfortable associating and playing against King David because of its Zionist identity. I also just saw on Sky News a group of pro-Palestine activists in Brighton in the UK going door to door, encouraging residents to boycott Israeli products and claiming that they're anti-Zionist but not anti-Semitic, that they're anti-racist, and that their anti-Zionism is consistent with that. So I want to speak to the question. I'm not a political expert. I want to share my very strong feelings about this question that really needs to be addressed. And I'd love people that are schooled in this to weigh in and support it or add to what I'm saying. I'd like to start by asking the question, what is Zionism? This very contested word. And what I'd like to say, because there are many forms of Zionism and different philosophies behind Zionism, but Zionism is the belief in the Jewish right to have a homeland in Israel, in historic Israel. And that's all it is. It's not about separate development like apartheid was. So I grew up in the aftermath of apartheid South Africa. Some of my earliest memories are Nelson Mandela's release from prison and the referendum against or for political change. And that was all in the early 90s. The philosophy of apartheid is about separate development. The question of Zionism is about the right for Jewish self-determination. Now, those who are anti-Zionist would believe in the Palestinian right for self-determination and to have a country that is Palestine. So my question then to those individuals who are anti-Zionist, if you believe in Palestinians' right for self-determination, why does the same not apply to Jews? So those who support the idea of a two-state solution would like to see both nations having self-determination in this space. This is a question that I would urge people to perhaps interrogate their double standard if they believe in Palestinian right to self-determination, but not Jewish right to self-determination. So those that see the Jews as not having a right, well, the Jews don't have any other country in the world. We know that one of the motivating factors, and not the only motivating factor, for the establishment of the State of Israel was Jewish persecution. And some of the immigration to Israel, Jewish immigration to Israel in the late 1800s, was Jews fleeing pogroms and Jews fleeing persecution before Nazi Germany, in the wake of Nazi Germany, after the Holocaust. So that is one of the reasons that Jews came to Israel. In terms of the question of the Jewish right, or the idea of Jews as colonialists that gets bandied about, that as if the Zionist project is essentially a colonial project. And I see people, pro-Palestinian individuals, mocking this idea of it was promised to them 3,000 years ago. That is not a claim. Now, to say that the Jews have always had a connection to Israel, I don't know how you measure a political claim. Is it about facts on the ground? Who was there first? how far back do you go? If there was always a Jewish presence in the land, and there's archaeological findings, and the idea of the state of Israel is all over Jewish text, the Torah, the Tanakh, Jewish writings, philosophy. You can't separate the idea of Israel and Jews, that it's woven into the fabric of what it is to be Jewish. So if you want to say that this is a colonial project, well, first of all, Jews were fleeing persecution when they came, the modern immigration to Israel. This wave of Jewish connection to Israel is largely about fleeing persecution and about something that is in our historical texts and our identity. So the question of a claim of what makes people have a right to be in a place is something that I would ask people that believe Jews should not be there to really look at and think about why you feel that you need to deny this aspect of Jewish heritage. Now, in terms of the question of whether the desire for a Jewish homeland, a specifically Jewish homeland with a Jewish majority, rather than, for example, a one-state solution, is somehow racist or unacceptable, so is also very relevant, because perhaps there's some in the BDS that just believe Jews can be in Israel, but we can't have our own homeland with a Jewish character. I guess there's also a double standard to look at there, is whether you support the idea that there are Muslim nations and there are Christian nations, and there is a space for particularism and for the expression of identity in this very small piece of land. Now, ideally, we want to have a two-state solution, and those of you who are anti-Israel will argue that Israel is encroaching on Palestinian land, and I understand that argument, and obviously the idea of settlement in areas that are earmarked for a Palestinian state is a very contested issue within Israeli society. But I do want to say that terrorist tactics against Jewish settlement in Israel has been a problem since before the State of Israel. As Jews started arriving in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and establishing kibbutzim and settlements, the advent of terrorism became a thing, and there were Jews that were murdered by terrorists, with terrorism being defined as attacks on civilians, to show opposition to Jewish immigration to what was at the time mandated Palestine under either the Ottomans or the British. Why am I speaking about this? It's not only the Jews that some Jews that have had a problem with two states side by side. It's also our neighbors who have not wanted the Judaization of areas of this country. So I think to deny that security and terrorism is a feature of some of the difficulties that we face, and that's the reason why we don't have two wonderful, flourishing countries side by side, I think, is to really overlook something. And I'm just urging the pro-Palestinian lobby, I know that this will fall on deaf ears, but I'm urging the pro-Palestinian lobby to really be intellectually honest and ask yourself, are you willing to read texts from both sides? Are you willing to look at the history? How fully educated are you? Or is this just your commitment regardless of the facts? And if it is your commitment regardless of the facts, then just be careful, because anti-Semitism is an irrational virus that does not conform to facts. So if you are have your heart set on this regardless of the facts, then I think it's just important to think for a moment about philosophies and ideologies that are very fixed and that are not open to thinking about the totality of history. I want to say that personally, I wish, as I said, from South Africa, we have, my understanding is that we have a very porous relationship with countries like Lesotho. I could be wrong, but this is my impression, that there's cooperation and there's fluidity, and those countries are not, have connections, but they are separate countries. Lesotho and Swaziland are landlocked countries within the broader territory of South Africa. And I wish that we could have two, Palestine and Israel, side by side, cooperating and living in peace, where people could travel freely for work. But since October 7th, that is even less likely. So some of the things that, well, most of the things that Hamas has done have not advanced the cause of two states. So you need to ask yourself, what do you really want when you oppose Israel? Are you opposing Israel's existence? If you are opposing Israel's existence, why? Why do you oppose the existence of a Jewish homeland? What do you really stand for? If you oppose what Israel did in during the war, I understand that, but just develop your argument and explain and think about why you want to deny Jews these opportunities as well. I understand that you see the Palestinians as the underdog and those that are being denied opportunities, but just question the history and how this came to be and why two-state solution peace accords have failed until now. Thank you for listening if you've got this far, and this is urgent.